early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Then we need to have safety measures and so on into this. So to solve complex problems, so they have the amazing ability. As scientists, before you have a scientific theory, you need to have hypothesis. You need to explore the different possibilities. For example, for drug discovery, for cancer treatment, you need to have the hypothesis-based exploration of such space. And these models can do a much more scalable job than a single scientist or a number of scientists. So that's how they're going to help us solve complex problems. They can help us with the exploration. They can help us with the learning from all the data and from multimodal data in the world.
Missy, do leaders in the business community understand the technology as is being put by Pascal? Do they understand what it is about, what AI is, and how is this affecting adoption?
So I think the biggest threat to national security in the United States is the technical illiteracy that is happening about AI, which is much bigger than generative AI. But you know, people think that they hear AI and they immediately think ChatGPT. I want to be really clear, and I'm going to be like Pascal and take on the professorial tone, but a little contrary to Pascal. Generative AI knows nothing. It does not know right from wrong. It does not know truth from a lie. It only knows what's in the data set. And if the data set is corrupted, then it knows corrupted things. The vertical AI is, I think, perhaps the best implementation because you narrowly constrain it. And I worry, and I lecture around the world, that companies who buy into the hype of generative AI are putting themselves at real risk. And if you have a software company that doesn't touch a safety critical system, then fine. But what I see is generative AI and versions of generative AI showing up in safety critical systems. And this is a real risk. People will die. Self-driving cars are making mistakes that end up in injuries. Pseudo self-driving cars like Teslas that with a lot of AI in them are killing people. So we need to make sure, and I think it starts with the C-suite. The C-suite.
All right, it's the early exchange where we shape policy and advance development with our conversation. That was part of the highlights of submission made at the conference, popularly first referred to as DAVOS in the Desert conference. That panel section took place on Tuesday where tech experts talk about some of the concerns as regards artificial intelligence. It's important to let you know that that beautiful face you often see with me on this program is right here as well. Blessing, how are you today?
I'm fine, Femi. Good morning.
Good morning.
I was just listening to some of the participants at the ongoing Future Investment Summit talk about some of the submissions and policies that are being pushed for at the summit. It's quite interesting that what they refer to as Davos in the Desert has become like a global forum that the world takes note of, and it attracts lots of people, more than 7,100 delegates. That's quite huge. And today we're going to be looking at the direction of the summit regarding AI. It's a wonderful one. I can already see that it's going to be an exciting conversation, even as we have in the studio a data analyst, Seyi Akindeinde, who has attended the UN conference on data. He'll tell us more about that. And he was at the GTech summit that took place in Dubai. I'm wondering why Seyi is not at the Future Investment Initiative, but he's here. He will answer that by himself. Good morning, Seyi.
Good morning. Good to see you. Good to be, live present in the studio.
I'm glad you have been joining us.
Yeah, thank you very
We're
much.
supposed to be in Saudi Arabia, but you're right here.
Well,
it's quite better.
Yeah, at least some of these things we can, there's technology, so we actually are monitoring what's going on there. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's bring in our special guest who joins us all the way from Saudi Arabia. We're being joined by Dr. Patrick Basham, who is the founder director of Democracy Institute, Washington, D.C., and former adjunct scholar and senior fellow of the Cato Institute. Dr. Patrick Basham, glad to have you join us as usual, and good to see you again.
Good morning. It's great to be with you. Always a pleasure to be with you and your colleagues. Looking forward to the conversation.
All right, great. I'm going to start the conversation with you because you are right there. I would like you to give us a first-hand account of some of the concerns. You know, you had a panel session on Tuesday where tech experts talked about issues related to artificial intelligence. Can you give us a picture of some of the concerns raised by these experts as regards the evolution and the paradigm shift being brought into the economic space by artificial intelligence?
Sure. In fact, I think before touching specifically on what the experts said, I thought it was interesting that before one of the major sessions here on AI, the organization ran a video. The video consisted of person on the street interviews that had been conducted in major cities around the world, just asking ordinary people what they thought about AI. And I mentioned this because I thought the video, those interviews, really encapsulated how ordinary people and also how experts here at the Future Investment Initiative view AI in a sort of headline way. So you had some people on the street in various cities saying, look, you know, this is very exciting. It's incredibly creative. You can see how this technology is going to really advance things for all of us. And importantly, you know, yes, technology is powerful, but it will be controlled by human beings. So that's great. And then you had other people saying, this is very exciting. This is very creative, all of that. But the problem is it's going to be controlled by human beings. And what if they make mistakes, or what if they're corrupt? And I think that debate, that divide about not the power of AI, but how AI will be controlled for good or for ill, is really what was coming through in the discussions that I've been observing here. And I think that that was epitomized by those clips you showed introducing our conversation, particularly where you had quite detailed discussion about the fact that, you know, it can be a case of, you know, bad data in, bad data out, or vice versa in terms of good data in, good data out. You know, the debate of whether AI, like all you know, computer models, are inherently either beneficiaries or victims of the human inputs in the choices that humans make into those models. So the discussion here has really been that, a discussion, a debate. And it's one of the reasons that I think that Davos in the Desert has taken a place alongside Davos in Switzerland, the World Economic Forum, as a driver of discussion, because unlike the World Economic Forum, the WEF, where the delegates are sort of told by speakers, this is what we've decided, you should think about this issue. Here in Riyadh at the Future Investment Initiative, on AI, for example, you have speakers with very divergent views about the threats, the challenges, and even if they agree over what those threats or challenges are, what solutions do they prescribe? And the delegates themselves, very different, multifaceted backgrounds, who, like those person on the street folks around the world who were interviewed for the video, have different biases, preferences, concerns, worries, anxieties about AI. So it's a roundabout way of saying that to this point, I don't think the speakers here or the delegates have really found any unanimity over the solutions or the prescriptions regarding AI, but rather an appreciation, a recognition that AI is powerful. It's here to stay, crucially. So it's not a question of how do we ignore it, how do we put it back in its box? Rather, it's a question of how do we harness its obvious potential for good in a way that overwhelms the really tangible dangers and challenges that we all face as a consequence of this, not just advancing technology, but rapidly advancing technology.
All right, good morning, Dr. Basham. It's quite great to see you again this morning. And I did tell you yesterday that we might be bringing you back to continue the conversation about the FII summit. Now, from all you said about the considerations of different delegates regarding responsible use, in my words, of AI and how it can develop global economy and society. Last year at the 7th edition of the summit, Goldman Sachs did predict that investments towards AI could reach $200 billion by the year 2025. Putting side by side these considerations and the prediction, where does that leave AI at the end of the summit?
Well, there's no question those predictions are proving to be accurate. Everything that was said a year ago about the role and significance of AI in the global economy, I think has already borne fruit. Again, it's not a question of whether AI is going to have an even larger place, even more influence than it did in its nascent period, but rather who is going to, figuratively speaking, is going to control it. So I think that if anything, those estimates, those expectations, those forecasts and predictions may have been modest. They may have undersold the economic investment in AI and the economic potential of AI. And so I think if we look back at, if I'm fortunate enough to be speaking with you again a year from now at FII 9, I think we'll look back at FII 8 and say that, like last year's FII, that the projections about AI in a financial and economic sense were again may have undersold its potential, entirely separate from the question of what are the benefits and what are the downsides of this amazing technology. There's no question that its economic and financial influence is even more significant than it was forecast even only a year ago.
Now let's see how we can, create a link between artificial intelligence and then the economy. The concern has been how this can be deployed to handling, economic development, like a driving force to advance economic growth. Now, how can this be achieved as regards global economy, and what are some of the risks or the concerns that this could also bring along in the course of implementation of this evolution?
Well, I think there's two paths that are being discussed. One is, you might say, sort of slightly more conventional in terms of the economic focus and infrastructure that most people are familiar with, and that is a discussion that has predates this conference, and is the one that your audience probably be most familiar with in terms of. For example, to what extent does AI substitute for or replace employment, right? And are we talking about low skill work? Are we talking about service workers? Are we talking about creative people? There was one AI discussion here in Riyadh where one of the speakers was pointing out, and he was saying this in a positive way, having a very positive perspective on the future of the influence of AI. He was saying that there are huge numbers of creative jobs within large companies that will simply be eliminated, and AI will fill those roles. And he was saying that this was a very positive thing because he was looking at it from the point of view of a CEO and the cost savings. Of course, some of the people in the audience who might be actually in some of those creative jobs perhaps had a less charitable view of his conclusion, thinking that this company's cost savings would include the loss of their own income. But of course, there it was in a nutshell, the obvious tangible benefits, but also downsides, certainly for some individuals, of AI in the sort of quote unquote traditional service economy. But one of the paths that has been getting attention here is regarding, and this may be of particular interest to an African audience, is the blue economy. I mean, there was a major session yesterday talking about how the blue economy can be improved for the benefit of the environment, and consequently for the benefit of those who depend upon it. You have several hundred million people around the world whose lives and livelihood are dependent on the blue economy, and that's disproportionately lower income individuals who are disproportionately on the African continent. And in looking at how sustainability, green energy, etc., can play a major role in ensuring not only a successful but a sustainable blue economy, then AI isn't necessarily part of the solution, but it is currently, and I think going forward, going to be part of the discussion about, is there an AI-related, AI-dependent solution? Is AI a way, as with so much technology in throughout history, is it a way of sort of jump-starting a solution? Is it a way of doing an end run around apparent obstacles that we face, for example, with determining how best to marry business and the blue economy to everyone's benefit? Does AI, is that the secret sauce somehow? And I don't think this conference has the agreed upon solution or bottom line to what the answer is, but it just reminds us, and I think it illustrates how every policy conundrum, large and small, that any individual country, any region, continent, or the world is facing globally, is going to be assessed and addressed from this point forward with an AI component to that debate. In some cases, a smaller one, but in many cases, a much larger one than perhaps people even a year or two ago would have forecast. And it may even be the preeminent one in those debates. So I think that's a snapshot of how AI is playing out in terms of these discussions. And I think the ripples on the pond, if I can excuse my sort of mixed metaphors with blue and green economies, the ripples on the pond are that when the delegates go home, as it were, that they're going to take these discussions with them. And we'll see over the coming months and years how those AI debates play out, because they're not going to play out globally with one answer. They're going to play out in different ways and to different degrees. And, to state the obvious, ought to be decided.
All right, Dr. Basham, there is a data analyst in the studio. He's Seyi Akindeinde. And so I'm going to take the conversation to him now for a bit. Seyi, you've heard many of the things that Dr. Basham has talked about, the considerations of the delegates. First of all, it's about responsible use of AI. There are issues about ethical use of AI, issues of bias, privacy, and all of that. And he mentioned too that on the use of AI, some of the CEOs were gladdened to know that AI could reduce the cost of operation. You could have artificial intelligence replace some human-done jobs. And they were gladdened by that. But on the other side, we know that for those who might be affected, it may not be a good one for them. So how do we bring all of this together, balance the considerations as well as what AI could do?
Thank you very, very much. I listened to Doctor, and I think he's made very, very valid points. And I also want to say that, when we have new technology like this, there's usually this skepticism. There's usually this, oh, what is it going to? And I liken it to, two things, essentially. When the Wright brothers created the plane as well, people were very skeptical. We had never seen this kind of thing before, something that will be moving through the air. What if we have crashes? What if we have this? Yes. Has it stopped crashes? No. But do we need air travel? Does it solve a problem? Do we need it? Does the economy of the world need it? Yes. And I think AI is going to be just like that. So while the worries are there, the ethical issues, the biases, the, job losses. But you see, what we do not realize is that in losing certain types of jobs, in certain types of things that we're doing, it creates new things, which is going to lead me into my second analogy of the internet. Also, when the internet came, there were a lot of people skeptical about job losses, people who were delivering letters, post offices were skeptical. Oh, if you have email, you can send email. People can now become journalists. You can have a blog and become your own, you can be your own reporter. You can have a YouTube channel and then have a channel online. Are people still going to be using the traditional media? But guess what it has done? It has enabled other industries. Before the internet, I'm sure we probably not have had anything like software engineering, in school. We'll not have even things like cybersecurity, things like web development. Look at all the jobs that it has brought about. Now we have, digital marketers, we have influencers, we have social media, people making. So it's created a new wave of, jobs that we would never have imagined. Now kids are growing up, they don't even want to be traditional medical doctors or lawyers or engineers. A lot of them want to be like my daughter. She wants to be a YouTuber, and that is a job these days. So the same thing is going to happen to AI is going to engender jobs that we can't even see now. So I think we need to take it on board. We need to, yes, there should be some kind of regulation on it. There should be some kind of, oversight function so that we do not allow, because at the end of the day, it works on data. And if there are biases in the data, if there are, like he said, human beings are still going to control it. But if you think about it too, we need to put our trust in humans. Human beings fly the planes. So at the end of the day, the trust is still going to be on the humans who are getting this data and implementing it. So we just need to put in some kind of, maybe every country, I know that, I don't know how it is in Saudi Arabia, but I know that in Dubai, there is a Ministry of Artificial Intelligence now, so it is actually being taken over by government to see that anybody who is going to be implementing these things would have to follow certain due diligence and due process. And I think that's the way forward.
Before I get back to Dr. Patrick Basham, let me also point your attention to what one of the tech giants said at the conference. That's Elon Musk. He said, and I would love to quote him, he warned about the dangers of artificial intelligence models. He said they are woke rather than maximally truth-seeking. Now, which points to the fact that the issue of control that you raised earlier. Now, he's also raising the concern about the danger attributed to the use of some of these artificial intelligence models, which somehow calls for the question for control. Now, the fear on the part of some people is if this kind of molders, falls into wrong hands, what will be the impact of that? So as a tech giant or an expert in this area, how do you think globally this idea of control or the responsive use of AI can be achieved at a global level? Now that the evolution is here, how do we strike it in the mode before it becomes a bigger problem?
I think that's now the job of, regulators, so just the same way when we had the internet and people started, the first people to use the internet back in the day were people that were using it for activities that were nefarious, people using it for things, and that's why right now we have scammers and all that. So what happened? They now started regulating, people connecting to the internet. So if you want to be, say, an ISP, for instance, there's a license you have to go for. And in getting that license, you have to, meet up with certain standards, meet certain regulations, and then you keep logs so that anytime anything happens, we can trace it back, to you. And that's what birthed something like, cybersecurity. So the same thing is going to happen in to my mind, in artificial intelligence, whereby for people training models, yes, there are biases, because at the end of the day, if I want to train a model and I gather all the data that supports my, motive and I put it in there and people are using it, definitely what it will regurgitate will be the data that I have fed it in. So we have to, when in training these models, we have to, we'll have to take away the human biases that we have, and we train, and it's there right now. Like for instance, if you want to generate any kind of image or picture, it gives you images and pictures that are not relevant, to us. That's because the data that that has been used. So it also means that in our own environment, say in the African context, in the Nigerian context, we also now have to start to look at creating our own models, using our own data, so that we can balance the equation. But if we don't do that, somebody is going to do it on our behalf, and that's what will happen. And if you look at the way it is, just like Google Maps, for instance, if you ever use Google Maps, you find out that there are some places where you put in, it doesn't understand. That's because the data was not, put in. So there are certain levels of biases. So that's where government, that's where regulators will have to come in and have to put the stakeholders, the people who are, implementing these models there. And Elon Musk is quite right. If you use the wrong data if all the data you are using is something that supports your own vision, your own biases, your own, view of life, then it's not going to make any sense if people are going to use it. So there has to be a level playing field where we have, this data that cuts across board, that is able to give us the information that we want unbiased.
All right, taking the conversation back to Dr. Basham. Now, if $200 billion was predicted to be invested in AI at the 7th edition of the FII Summit, and from what you said, that prediction is coming true. Now, Seyi has also brought in the angle of training of this artificial intelligence, training of these machines and new innovations, new devices that will be used. What is the conversation around the development of this in terms of the need, the regions, and the intent of these machines that are going to be developed to begin to carry out artificial intelligence functions?
Well, I think the one thing that there is unanimity about is the fact that the need for as you say, the machinery to train AI, and then of course then we start getting into the obvious, but the not necessarily intractable, but the major questions of, well, okay, who develops them and how do they do so? Now, there's no question that the delegate population at an event like this has the skill set, has the esoteric knowledge and skills to be very much a part of that conversation. In fact, I think in terms of some of the individuals and companies represented, driving forces in that space. So I think there's a great deal of confidence that sufficient intelligence and resources, financial and in terms of human capital, are going to be applied to answer that very question of, who, or rather, what trains the machines. But that then takes us right back to the question of who is training the machines to train the AI. And just, your expert guest in the studio, I agree 100%. Historically, we've always been anxious and nervous about new technology. And history tells us that in most cases, in net terms, technology has been beneficial, even though in almost all cases there are some downsides. But I think where the training of AI starts to lose its unanimity of perspective is that very question of who is going to be the driving force behind the technology. And as someone in my role, someone who studies public opinion and public attitudes very closely, I think we're in a different position than we would have been, let's say, even a decade, certainly 15, 20 years ago. By that, I mean that if AI had been where it is now a decade or more ago, most people would have obviously recognized the challenges and had concerns, but there would have been a far greater sense of trust that the people, the quote unquote experts in the field and in policy making, for example, that would be the ones controlling it, controlling this new technology, that they would, on balance, have the best intentions and, in more cases than not, do the right thing. But today, public trust, not just in the West but elsewhere, has been so reduced, even destroyed, across almost every institution of significance. Obviously, the media, but politics, big business, so big tech, the education systems, that so many people, most people, no longer presume that the experts that are put before them are necessarily in possession either of the facts, or if they are, whether they are willing to share them rather than use them to further a particular agenda. All to say that lack of that distrust of experts means that the challenge for those driving AI forward, for financial and business reasons, are going to be faced with an additional challenge, a public relations challenge of not only convincing people, the general public, that these machines that are going to drive AI are a force for economic good, and that the people who lose their jobs will be outnumbered by those who will gain, as your guest was suggesting, gain jobs that we don't even know about yet in many cases, but that those who are guiding the overall process have society's best, the general interest at heart, and they're not simply furthering a particular agenda. And the problem is that even if none of those negatives are present, there are many people who today their default position will be that they are. And so there's an enormous communications challenge as well as a financial and economic challenge for the individuals, the institutions, the companies, the governments who are currently driving, the AI train.
Let me bring Seyi in here now. The theme for this year's summit is rebuilding trust. We're at a time where the world is more divided than ever. You have conflicts in the Middle East, and they're due to all sort of political concerns. And now you have AI coming into the picture to drive the narrative. How do we ensure that instead of reinforcing the divide with the use of AI, it's helping to also strengthen the trust among nations? You're aware of what happened between the US and issues related to the use of TikTok, the issue of data and the suspicion about China or the link to China. How do we ensure that now that AI is driving the narrative, rather than reinforcing the distrust or the trust gap that has existed, is also helping to facilitate the trust that should exist, or the unity that should exist among nations?
That's a very thought-provoking question, and I think more than anything, I think we need education and awareness. The problem has always been that, and I understand the angst coming from several factions, several sectors of the economy, but I also believe that, like Dr. Patrick said there, that technology has been a net positive. However, when it starts, there's always that, we're quick to look at the negative aspects. And that is due to lack of people understanding what this technology is supposed to do. And at the end of the day, you see, the problem is not AI, it's not technology, it's not the internet, the problem is actually the use case to which it is put. Any piece of technology can be used for good, and any piece of technology can be used for bad. So I think it is the education. We need to, talk to people that matter. We need to talk to policy makers. That is, practitioners need to look at it. Yes, the challenge is that practitioners like us in the field, we're quick to always, tout the positive. Sometimes you also need to talk about the negative aspects so that the policy makers would understand that, okay, we can use this thing for good. We can use this thing, for anything can be. I mean, like, people go to school to read chemistry, and then you mix chemicals together and you have drugs. AI can give you drugs. But at the same time, some people go in there and mix something and it becomes poison. Are you going to blame chemistry? Are you going to blame science? No, you're going to blame the person. So at the end of the day, like you said, it's education and it's the person there. That's why we have to be ethical about what we do. That's why we have to understand. And then the policy, the people making the policy too, should understand not just the general, technology. They have to understand specific use cases as it pertains to, maybe for Africa. And you see, when technology comes, when it is new, I always look at it from, like, for instance, this is the worst AI would be. Anything from here is progression. When the internet too came, there were a lot of things that we do now. I mean, Dr. Patrick is talking to us from Saudi Arabia through technology. How would this have been possible 10 years ago with the kind of bandwidth that we had on dial-up? But because we have broadband now. But guess what? Back then, too, people were thinking, the internet. But look at the progression. We have technology now that would allow anybody to be anywhere. We are in the studio. He's in Saudi Arabia. You can get someone from US joining. And that is the net positive. However, also, people are using this same technology for negative things. So the challenge is, like I said, is to understand the dichotomy, to look at all the sides, and then policy makers will now sit down and formulate policies. What necessarily would work in a place like Saudi Arabia or New York or Dubai may not actually work here. So we have to come up with our own. When the internet too came, and I remember when you go onto the internet, there were not African websites. All the websites we were seeing were American websites, the foreign. And over time, people here started building, developing our own websites, developing our own payment systems, developing our own. So I think AI and all these technologies too, eventually we'll get it. I'm sure by next year, 2 years time, we will see the progression and we'll see that, oh, wow, this is. And as we are seeing these things, remember that technology would always precede any form of regulation or policy. Policy would come after we've seen the use cases to which, so we can now use the policy to address it. But by and large, education should be number one. And I think it has to start from, schools. We have to start at the grassroots, at the, doctor was also talking about, the blue collar people, to know that right now there is technology, that can literally help you, that can transform you. And then when we start it, I'm sure in the next 2-3 years, we'll start to have courses in maybe AI policy, for legal studies, AI technology for computer engineering students, AI this, and that's going to bring about new jobs that, creative people will bring about. Education and awareness should be prime in our thinking.
All right, Dr. Basham, you highlighted the conversation moving towards blue economy, green economy, and the use or the application of AI in these sectors. For one of the things you also mentioned is the level at which AI can be used. But what is guaranteed is that for every aspect of life, there will be the AI element. Now, at the summit, what area about blue economy, green economy, did the delegates look at regarding applying artificial intelligence, and what kind of investments do you think are going towards this area?
Well, I think how AI is being looked at, it's all obviously hypothetical, or mainly hypothetical. Maybe the experts know more about it than I do, but the sense I have from the outside looking in is that the aspect of AI as applied to the blue/green economy is there a way of, you might say, programming the kind of finesse and management, if I can use that word, it may be a little crude, management of the blue economic the ecosystem, both economic ecosystem and environmental ecosystem. Is there a way of doing that that brings advantages that are greater than the sort of traditional, either government dictated, centered approach to managing ecosystems, or a private business centered approach, both of which have their advantages and disadvantages. I think most people these days, certainly at a conference like this, would say that there are greater advantages and fewer disadvantages to the private rather than the government-led approach. But nevertheless, that question of whether, you might say, the not the problem, but the challenge of finessing that management of such a fragile but crucial ecosystem, can it be, as it were, handed over on a day-to-day basis to AI? And I think you have some people who are saying that's the obvious prescription that we need, so that we are less reliant on the day-to-day, the day-to-day, not say foibles, but prejudices perhaps of those for whom profit-seeking might appear to be their only, or at least their bottom line consideration. And then, of course, the pushback on that is that, in theory, that sounds great, but once again, we return to the question of who dictates, who controls to the AI, how they are going to perform that day-to-day management. So could the technology be the silver bullet here that provides perhaps a historic answer to that public-private debate over management of ecosystems? Or is it really camouflage for the fact that we haven't progressed intellectually? We don't actually have a new answer, and that simply saying the technology is the new answer is convenient. But as your guest in the studio, I think, was suggesting correctly, the solution, neither the solution nor the problem, is the technology itself. It's its application. And so whether we're talking about the blue economy or the green economy or any other more quote unquote traditional element of the global economy, the technology applied is less, its outcome, its end result is less about nature of the technology itself than it is the human element that applies that technology and the choices it makes about that application.
All right, Dr. Basham, I would like us to make reference to what the government of Saudi Arabia is doing in respect to artificial intelligence and how that can be a lesson or reference for other nations. You are following the trends of event in this location. Now, you observed a few days ago, the government of Saudi Arabia has to release billions of dollars for startups to encourage the use of artificial intelligence. And the aim of having this kind of conference by the Crown Prince is also to position Saudi Arabia as a global leader when it comes to investment and, most importantly, artificial intelligence. What are some of the lessons for other nations as regards what Saudi Arabia is doing? How successful has it been? And this kind of model, what could be, if it's going to be replicated in other nations, how will it help to also be a driving force for the growth of the economy and the advancement of other nations?
Sure. Well, I think there are many lessons from the case study, the ongoing real-time contemporaneous case study that is Saudi Arabia regarding economic diversification, and as you correctly suggest, AI being central to that. I think the principal lesson that I would suggest to other countries is that our choices matter, and that may seem like a really simplistic and obvious thing to say, but I think too often governments around the world, global South, and especially increasingly in the West, act as if bad performance economically, for example, or environmentally, you choose your sector, bad performance is something that just sort of happens to us. It's something that's almost fated, and that, so for example, if we're suffering from inflation, then the government will turn around and say, yes, inflation is too high, but it's high all around the world. As if, like the weather, it's something that just happened to us this month, or today. But inflation, like foreign investment, lack of capital, lack of whether it's domestic investment or poor trade relations, they are a consequence of our decisions as governments. Obviously, it's an interdependent, a dynamic and competitive marketplace. So we can only do so much. We are dependent on what others' decisions are. But that is the nature of economics and economic policy making. And I stress this because I think too often we allow our policymakers, our governments, to get away with poor decision making. And we have an example in the United States where the person running to continue Biden administration's policies is running, rightly or wrongly, as if they have not been a part of that administration. And so Saudi Arabia has decided several years ago that it wanted to enlarge and expand its economic footprint and the nature of it. It was not going to be a traditional energy focused economy, and has made great strides in several years, so that now half the GNP, for example, is no longer sort of an oil-dependent GNP. But it's done that by making certain choices. Now, obviously, Saudi Arabia had and has a great deal of financial muscle to apply. But again, if you're going to apply that financial muscle, you have to do it in smart ways, and largely they have done so. And so the decision to diversify is a risky one, it's a brave one, and it can blow up in your face. And governments around the world in recent times and in the past have made those kinds of decisions, and those decisions have blown up in their faces. But the Saudis, I think, have made some very smart choices, and their fundamental determination to be more involved in the global economy, to be more not just Western facing, but globally facing, right? So this means specifically two things, or principally two things. It means that they have continued to invest around the world, investing more and more. But interestingly, counterintuitively for some, they've also been encouraging investment in their own country. So you have far more capital coming in from external sources to Saudi Arabia, and you have more Saudi capital leaving the country. You have the Saudis much more determined to deepen trade relations around the world. And they've done so across all these sectors in a way which I think is a very realistic approach. That is, they're explicitly seeking the self-interest of Saudi Arabia. Today, sometimes that's viewed as a radical approach, and sometimes it's viewed as a commonsensical approach. But for the Saudis, it means that they are willing to engage in trade and economic relations pretty much with anyone if it's in Saudi Arabia's interest. And that, again, it's not a new experiment, but it's a contemporaneous experiment. And we'll have to watch to see how that plays out for them, because there will be lessons from that for countries around the world. But in terms of AI specifically, the Saudis have said, AI is here, it's not going anywhere. Why shouldn't we get our arms around this technology and ensure that whatever role AI plays going forward in the economy, domestically and globally, we think it's going to be large, that we're going to be central to that. And so they are investing the money in the human capital. And the Future Investment Initiative is a good example of this, where they are, you might say, celebrating the importance of AI, but in trying to figure out simultaneously that celebration of the power of AI, does it actually does it foreshadow some difficult challenges ahead in policy terms and in financial terms and perhaps in political terms as well, right? So as the Saudis move into new areas like minerals, as they move into green energy in massive ways, they are attempting to marry this more global-facing, more transparent, more interwoven economic role, marry that with the technology of AI, thinking that this can sort of ratchet up the improvements. Now, this, of course, is an experiment in real time. It's ongoing. They are, in a sense, a global South Guinea, maybe the global South guinea pig, because of their resources and their focus on this new approach. So I can't sort of sit here today and say, okay, it has all worked 100% or it's failed 100%. I think the signs so far are very encouraging for Saudi Arabia and therefore for those who would learn lessons. But it is very much a case of watch this space. And I think as the Future Investment Initiative continues on down the road and gets larger and, most importantly, more influential, then we'll have more and more opportunity to study and learn from the Saudis the pros and cons of their approach.
All right, Dr. Basham, you understand that technology is advantage for whoever is using the technology. Now, artificial intelligence does not work alone. It works alongside other emerging technologies like blockchain and the others. And there have always been a digital divide. What are the submissions regarding closing this divide using artificial intelligence?
There's tremendous concern and appreciation here at the Future Investment Initiative, as there was last year, but I would say it's even more palpable this year, that there is a divide, there is a digital divide, and therefore there is likely to be an AI-based centered divide as well. And that there needs to be tremendous focus on minimizing that divide, bridging that divide. Now, you might say, I think that's important, and I think it's the correct recognition, because it correctly recognizes one of AI's principal challenges in a geopolitical sense. But the truth is, that's the easy part, right? The easy part is identifying the problem. The difficulty is dealing with it. And so the discussion that's ongoing here, and I'm sure it will continue next year, does not produce easy answers, right? So we know from the recent experience with climate change debate, the income inequality, you name the issue that has been more pressing perhaps for the global South than other parts of the world, and the parts of the global South that are on the deficit side of one of these respective divides. Global, that is, in this case, Western appreciation of the existence of the problem, and even a commitment to help resolve that problem, does not necessarily produce the desired outcome. And so I think it would be massively premature for me to say, well, I think this is what they're going to do. But the truth is, I don't think that that is here at the Future Investment Initiative or other influential organizations and meetings around the world, have really truly come to grips with what are the necessary they know what the challenges, what are the necessary changes that need to be implemented. So it's the risk of sort of providing you with what sounds like a quite evasive answer. I just don't think that the progress has been made yet intellectually and in policy making terms. Now, 12 months from now, if we talk about this, then hopefully there's something a little more concrete sort of on the table, either that's brought to the Future Investment Initiative because that's what governments, et cetera, and others have been doing over the subsequent 12 months, or because it's germinates out of this kind of a meeting, as so many good ideas have done over the last several years. So again, we have to watch this space, but you identify what is certainly one of the principal, but perhaps until recently, until a meeting like this, one of the less appreciated challenges that AI provides us, along with all the others that we've already discussed this morning.
Nice submission there, and what a way to wrap up this conversation. We must say a special thank you to Dr. Patrick Basham for creating time out of your busy schedule to have this kind of conversation with us. Wish you more success in your endeavors, and as you enjoy the rest of the conference, talking more about how to make the continent better. We hope to have you again, maybe when next we need to talk about the US election, which is coming up in a few days. Thank you so much for your submission on the issue of the investment and the Davos in the Desert conference taking place in Saudi Arabia.
It's been my great pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we're not done yet. Seyi is still here. You heard what Doctor said. But before I have your, closing remarks, I want us to take reference from what Elon Musk said, and I'd like us to take that soundbite now, for us to take a listen. Thereafter, Seyi will react to that.
And that by 2029 or 2030, we might see AI as capable as 8 billion humans. Are you still seeing that pace?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. It's a difficult thing to quantify exactly, but I certainly feel comfortable saying that it's getting 10 times better per year, which is, let's say it's, 4 years from now, that would mean 10,000 times better.
How do you think about, the upside will take care of itself. How do you protect against the downside?
Well, my instinct with respect to AI safety is that you have to create a maximally truth-seeking AI, which may sound obvious, but that's what I'm seeing being produced is not maximally truth-seeking. It tends to be trained to be politically correct, and for a lot of the AIs that are being trained in the San Francisco Bay Area, they have taken on the philosophy of the people around them, which kind of makes sense.
All right, that was the special interview session with Elon Musk, talking about the perception as regards artificial intelligence replacing human in the next 4 years. Now, let me seek the opinion of Seyi in this regard. You heard what that tech giant said, Elon Musk, as regards the question was put to him, what he foresee to be the evolution that could arise from AI in the next 4 years, the concern about AI replacing, artificial intelligence replacing human intelligence. What's your take on that?
I tend to agree, because right now we're moving towards AI agents. If you're in the industry, you find out that people are now creating specific AIs that can solve specific problems, which is what the video that ran at the beginning of the show, where people are building vertical AIs. So you are building an AI that can understand, a niche area. And you see, the good thing about that AI is that because an AI does not inherently have any bias, like a human being, you can be doing something, you can get tired. So the way you do, maybe the first thing may not be the way you do the 10th thing, because by that time you are tired, you are exhausted, so the energy isn't there. But you see, when you have robots, when you have AIs doing these things, they do it across board. That's why you have, if you go to some factories now, they've largely replaced. Like I mean, I was watching a video on how they manufacture the fuselage of an airplane. Everything is machine based because they know that machines will not get tired and they can run for 24 hours. However, in saying that, yes, it will take some of those repetitive tasks from human beings. Then it leaves us with more creative tasks. I mean, it's good. It's a good thing you're even saying it. I was in a university this week where people were saying, if AI is doing assignments for people, you give them assignment. A D student last semester in physics is now an A student because you give them assignment, they put it in AI. And I said that, look, that means that even the educational system would have to move from lower order thinking to higher order thinking. It simply means that instead of asking students, please name the parts of an insect or name the parts of a computer, you are not going to be moving from, naming and identifying, to more things like evaluating and creating, that's developing new solutions, which is what AI is really doing. AI is good at things that humans find very difficult to do, so it can find patterns in things, it can coordinate things, it can, correlate news stories, it can bring this information, match it with this information, find patterns. And that's why people are even talking about using it in healthcare for cancer drug discovery. Now, human beings have discovered drugs for a particular cancer, and it can look at the molecules, match it. Okay, I can match it with these molecules here. You do, it gives you that idea. But at the end of the day, a human being is still going to be the one to put, these things together. So there will still be a lot of jobs, but the jobs will now move from people who are just doing repetitive tasks, data entry, doing the same thing, changing engine oil. We're not going to move to things that are more creative. I think the world is going to actually be a better place, because once that changes, human beings now know that we can now create more things. I can almost say that within the next 5 years, we're going to see innovations that we can't, even our brains now cannot fathom, which is what Elon Musk is trying to say. But the thing again is that the lower order jobs, people who are not ready to upskill themselves, who are there thinking, you have to upskill, you have to be able to use these tools. It's almost like the internet. Everybody is using the internet now. And I like the last question you asked, Dr. Patrick, about advancement. And I'm also surprised. I think our own problem here is that of mindset. Because when you go onto the internet, the minister is always talking about AI using, and people are saying, you are talking about AI in a country where we don't have roots, where we have not eaten. But we forget that development is not linear. Development is not serial. You don't say because you have not eaten, then we okay, let's provide food first, then before we look. We do these things in parallel. Look at what the mobile phone did for us. We didn't have landlines. I don't think anybody in my own age ever used a landline, like that. But look at everybody's carrying mobile. So we fast-tracked our development just because a government came in and said, instead of building lines, cables, why don't we just move to the technology that is available, which is, and that's the same thing that's going to happen to AI. We can say because we don't have roots and we don't have power, then we should not develop the other side. And I think we have to, change our mindset. And if you look at all these countries, there are airports you pass through now, they don't stamp your passport again. You just walk through it. There's a camera, it scans using AI, it matches it. The gate, smart gate, it opens. You don't stamp. In fact, one of my colleagues that we went was even scared that we just walked through this gate. Nobody stopped us. Are you sure we're not illegal? And that's what technology, and the thing is, everything has seen you. Where they have issues, okay, maybe your passport cannot be seen or it's cracked a bit, then you go, there's a human who is there, and in 2 seconds, you have passed through it as well. The passport we carry now, there's a chip inside with all your biometrics, so you can't forge it. That's what technology is going to do, and that's why we have to embrace it.
Okay, Elon Musk also highlighted something very crucial, which is AI truth-seeking and AI and political correctness. So, Dr. Basham spoke on that, the distrust for the experts. Where is what should Africa be doing? Should there be a sort of protectionism by every region if there is a distrust? And sometimes it's not clear whether this is AI truth-seeking or this is about some political correctness. how do businesses and even regions build an advantage where, in a bid to comply with the way the trend the world is going, you are not disadvantaged by some political correctness?
Thank you. And I think that's the problem we have here. We have a problem of trying to over-regulate, new technology. So in order for it to be, like I said, AIs are but you don't want an AI that is politically correct. You want an AI that gives, alternative views. Okay, at the end of the day, let the human being, it's like election voting. I want to be able to, I don't want to always hear the good side of, this party or that, but I want to be able to make my, decision. So when we overregulate, it stifles innovation, which is why if you look at all, Elon Musk is in America. There, he mentioned something about the models being developed in San Francisco. How come the models are not being developed in Europe? Because there is over-regulation. So innovation is not coming out, and where innovation is not, you don't have innovation. People will migrate naturally to where. So we have to relax some of these rules. Look at what works. Yes, there will be mistakes. There will be errors. There will be a few. I mean, the lady at the beginning in the video you ran was saying, self-driving cars are killing people, And I'm thinking to myself, when the Wright brothers started playing, planes were crashing. In fact, one of the most difficult jobs in the world is a military pilot, the person who's going to fly a plane for the first time after manufacture, because you don't know what can go wrong. But you see, we have to there will probably be errors, there'll be mistakes, but in that error, that's where economies advance. We fix those issues, and then we now look at what works, and then we now have industries that will now come and say, okay, we have these errors. People will now start to study, and I give an example of internet and cybersecurity. Internet has come to stay. It helps us. People can be here, and you can get a degree from, but cyber criminals are also using it. We have the fraudsters, we have the 419ers, we have the scammers, we have the Yahoo boys. But now there's an industry called cybersecurity that is monitoring, that. So it has created new jobs, it has created new industries. We have software development. The same thing would have to happen to. So our policy makers, I think our policy makers need to be going for conferences, like this, like the DAVOS in the Desert, like even, UN, so that they are sitting in, and I'm not talking about government officials from maybe the Ministry of technology. We have to be talking about even government officials from the presidency, so that as they are listening to these things too, they come back home and they call a meeting and say, okay, how do we apply it to our own situation? AI is helping even in things like, you see, one of the problems we have in Nigeria is the barrier to education is very high. So we don't have innovation. So if you go to the north or the east, it's not that people there do not have inventions, but when you have to teach somebody in a language that he does not understand, so you have to teach them in English. AIs exist now where you can have somebody, you can take somebody who's speaking English now, take him to the east. You can now go and teach physics, chemistry, computer science to somebody who does not understand English, who understands Igbo or Yoruba or Hausa, and then the person is listening to it in his own language. He can make his own decision. He can now come up with solutions. So once you remove that barrier using AI, the economy will develop. So we need to create an overarching policy that will solve, some of these problems.
All right, let's wrap up with this. How would you expect, Africa to prepare for this kind of evolution? You've always had this divide between the global south and the global north when it comes to the issue of technology, where you have to depend on the Western world for, some of this equipment, this software that have been developed by them. But Africa, in order to catch up or prepare for this evolution, what should be the next step for Africa?
Two things. Mindset shift. We need to have a mindset shift. We need to look. Somebody put something on LinkedIn one time, and he said, when you go to all these advanced countries, things work, digitally, electronically, smart gates. But when you come here, there's this intrinsic mindset that if I implement technology, it's going to wipe away jobs, and you're going to take people off, the economy, and they will not be able to feed. So to the extent that when you get to Nigeria's airport, you will see, by the time you go through, even as you are coming in, people that want to help you with this customs, there are 10 people checking one bag. Immigration, there are 15 people. You are talking to one person. And you look at it that technology, there are technologies that you put your bag, you don't even have to, it scans everything. You don't have to open the bag, you don't have to look at it. It goes through the conveyor belt, it scans it, it moves. But here, people are still thinking that, if we do this technology now, all those people that you are seeing, about 50 or 100 of them, what are they going to eat? And what are they going to eat? But it's stifling, so you have queues. So those are the issues. We need to move from that mindset of, what will people eat? Because at the end of the day, technology is there to, do things faster, better, cheaper. And then the second one is obviously education and awareness. We need to be educated about a lot of the positives that this technology will bring to us. We need to bring it home. We don't have to go to Dubai or Saudi Arabia or US and then copy and paste, because the fundamental problem they have there is not the fundamental problem we have here. Our own issues are, like in Nigeria, for instance, how was technology able to solve certain? There was a time in Nigeria when people wrote JAMB. All the students, in checking results, they will have to go to the JAMB office. And it will be, somebody decided to say, okay, can we build a portal where people will buy, these JAMB scratch cards and then implement? Guess what? Because it's an African nation, abroad, when you write an exam, what happens? They give you your result free. It is your mandate. You have written the exam. But here, when you write JAMB, you have to buy that scratch card to get your result. And somebody looked at it and said, that's a solution that works for us. It may not work abroad, but it works here. I think that's the way we need to go, even in AI as well.
Thank you so much, Seyi Akindeinde, the founder, CEO, Hyperspace Neural AI. We've been talking so much about AI because as part of the focus of the ongoing Future Investment Initiative 2024. Earlier, we had Dr. Basham, Dr. Patrick Basham, who is the founding director of the Democracy Institute of Washington, D.C., and former adjunct scholar and senior fellow of the Cato Institute, talk to us also about it. It's been a wonderful conversation having you both look at the issues and what each region can do and how it will help the global economy and also the society. Thank you, Seyi.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.